Hello, welcome to the Reframing Mindset podcast. We are clear my head of the thoughts that are preventing clarity, practice my speech, among other things. Episodes range from informative knowledge to funny stories about my experiences, and in the future, maybe include interviews. So subscribe and enjoy. Episodes drop every other day. Okay, welcome back to Reframe Mindset Podcast. My name is Constant Brooks, and in this episode, we're going to talk about, since it's Father's Day, I know when this episode is released, it would not be um Father's Day. But I'm recording it on Father's Day, so that when as there will be a next Father's Day, so it might as well use this Father's Day to actually reminisce on how when eventually I'll be celebrating that. You know, if you have to start plan before, you have to start plan because if you listen to the podcast, you go in the plan and execution, and unforeseen things happen. You know, but if you don't plan for it, then you have something that is called unplanned parenthood, and then what happens is that you go back into the cycle of poverty. And then what happens is that your child go through the same poverty cycle, same rough life, the rough life or hard life that you had to actually work hard to actually come out of. And it's like, nah, bro, that's not how you want it. That's not how you want it. What you want to is you want to work your way out of that hard life that you were born into. Then give your child a better start so that when they grow up, they have a better start in life because you have started experiencing and stuff like that. And then what happens is that they can actually maybe return on investment in your later years. Give you a better life that, like for example, um, when I left university, and such. My grandmother usually listen to her radio because that's the time that she will grow up into. Radios. That was the thing. And then, when I left university and such, I was there, broke as a joke, barely could leave the house, because I was too poor and have no money, nothing like that. And such. And it's usually I listen to the radio, but the problem was that the radio, if you know about radios, it's like you have to be in a certain frequency for it to be good. Sometimes it works, and then when it's not in the right area, then it doesn't work, and then it has statics and stuff like that. So it really takes a while. Really takes a while. So it's like one of those stuff like, okay, yeah, yeah, it's the radio life is good. Like that, not to say we haven't reached at this recording episode. We haven't reached that stage where we can live without the radio. Those, and that's the thing about I did an episode a while back where I thought about. I think the episode is called the old way and new way or something like that, where um where I mentioned that you can't really rush into the new way of doing things without really understanding the importance of the old way, because what happens is that if you actually rush into the new way of doing things, you might kind of forget or you may not understand the importance of the old way of doing things. And that was me. That was me, fresh out of university. I have all this university knowledge and all this smart knowledge. But when the real world test comes, all those knowledge weren't applicable as yet because um it weren't applicable as yet because what I barely had food, shelter, or clothing. I barely had that on my own. So if you don't barely had that on your own, what in the world can my university knowledge do when you barely can can shelter yourself, on your own money, eat, eat your food and stuff like that, and you'll be like, okay, yes, you can get a job and stuff like that. Yeah, but you can't be out here looking for your dream job until you're gonna build this nice life and such like that. When you have to actually take things from the basics. So, the episode where I talk about, let me try to see if I can find it. Uh, let's see. The old way versus the new way. That's the episode. It's important to actually learn the old way. And, growing up with time, because what happened is that eventually, if you live long enough, like my grandmother did live along enough, you'll be old. And your ways, for example, this podcast and such ways and stuff, will be considered antique one time. And when you're in retirement, and stuff like that, yeah, these ways is going to be important for your younger ones coming out and going through school and learning school, and they come out and then they are lost. These older ways are going to be important. And what happened is that, you know, my my grandmother did her thing to actually make it this far. And then because she made it this far, this experience, all those knowledge that she imparted on me those days when I'm broke as a joke in the university stage, um, in the, and Bill had no idea how the hell I'm going to push forward. I was really depressed and all those stuff is helping me now. And then what happened now is that I can impart that knowledge, and I know that she's gone to you in a better way because you are whoever you are will be listening this way in the future could be in the situation that I was, and then you want some guidance. Because when I left, I wanted some guidance, and my grandma was the last place I was thinking about because never see it like that. Because honestly, I come up with the universal knowledge, and then I was like, oh, okay, yeah, so it's like um, she wouldn't understand and such like that. But you know, what happened was that after I tried all those ways and realized that what happened was that all those other ways I was looking for were out of my means. I was looking to very richer people with different lifestyles than the one that I had in my reality. So all those advice, you know, I couldn't really execute on any of them at all because I was not rich enough to even execute on one of them. So it was really depressing where I was hopeful and dreaming about, oh yes, I could do all of those stuff, look into the futuristic stuff that, YouTube people I watch on YouTube could do. But I had no means to actually do it. But then what happened was I have my grandmother that passed the worst, and then she gave me the realistic view on life. And that is the important thing that you need. You need a realistic view of how hard life is going to be. And that's what this podcast is. Give you the realistic view of give you a realistic documentation of how hard this road was for me to reach this far. And what happened was that, because I learned my grandmother's hard road to where she reached, I reached a certain stage at a younger age than she would have, and such like that. So I actually reached this far, er, um, at a faster pace than because she learned the lessons and then imparted to me, and then I executed due to because I started earlier and she never understood. She learned those knowledge through experience. She learned those knowledge through experience and imparted to me early so that I could actually, when the time comes for me, when I would say, okay, I would, when the time come when I would learn those stuff through experience, I learned them through word of mouth, to the fact that, I was told by this before that, okay, this is what my grandma said, yes, this life is rough and stuff like that, and things will happen. So that's, those stuff come to me where, yeah, this was one of the reasons why I lasted this long. Then what happens now? I have this new way to actually import it to the future generation where they see all that I go through, and then boom, they do it way faster than me. When they do it way faster than me now, then it's a cycle. It's a cycle. So I said, yo, my way, just like how eventually my grandmother's way, my grandmother's way was futuristic to her compared to where she coming from. The radio way is futuristic to her and her comfortable way of doing things. But when I came in now, what happened was I introduced her to the smartphone, and what happened was apps because certain shows that she usually watch, radios station that she usually listen to, had apps that she could actually listen to and such like that. So I actually did that, and then she was able to actually navigate that. So she was able to actually enjoy her show using the apps and smartphone, and so your grandmother using the smartphone, and funny enough, I'm the work that I'm in now is a lot of grandmothers and older people have a smartphone because what happened was that the clients that I'm dealing with are very at a farther stage, so that's the thing about where I talk about coming out of poverty and such like that. Everybody will start up equal stage or stuff like that. It's different as you go up. There are different levels and such like that. So my grandmother, for a futuristic way, was radio. I introduced her to the smartphone stage, and she enjoyed it. Well, enjoyed the time and such. And then what happened was that she teach me the old ways of the hard life as such. Because when I'm going out in the real world now, those hard life lessons are important for what I've been through. The 2020 pandemic and all those stuff was important so that I could actually reach this far. Then I reach this far now, then I can start incorporate those university knowledge too. Because I'm just reaching that phase where I'm reaching the point where I can actually support my food, shelter, and clothing. I'm reaching that part where I just reach the basics. When you start reaching the basics now, then we can start actually look to do something else. Like for example, get a job. Like I'm employed now. That's important. When you get a job, get an income to start supplement yourself and such. Then you can start investing in your wants and need. That's the way of life. And then what happens that this phase after you leave the university and have to support yourself. This phase is for you to actually you have the first phase for actually to you build your needs. So the things that you actually need to survive. Eh, You actually try to build your want. You build the things that hobbies and stuff like that you enjoy so that you can actually say, okay, yes, this is my when I'm after trials and works of hard life, then I can come home to this and this nice life, for example, gaming and such like that. I'm working now, so maybe eventually in the future I can invest in buying games on my own. Usually before in the past when I was growing up, I could afford those to even buy it. It would be my family that had to purchase it, and I would actually maybe work, do well in school to actually get the thing that I actually want. Now I'm working now, then I can actually work, put in hours, and then get the afford the console that I want and such like that. Then if I get the kid, our child or such like that, they don't have to actually start how I started. I could be in the position where I could actually buy them the stuff. So they could actually get introduced to the future early on than how I was introduced to the future. So that would give them a better start than I was. So that's how you have to actually think about it. So I said that's all. So with that being said, the episode is yeah, I reach this phase in life where I can understand what having a son or a daughter means now. Because if you listen to future episode, you'll be like, you'll hear be like, I don't want to have a child or stuff like that. And I think still in that phase because it's a really, to grow a child, it's really hard. A lot of money investment and stuff like that, and a lot of investment, splash with the woman and all those stuff. It's a lot of investment. But it's like there's a priceless phase that I can just see. When I reach this phase in life, you just see the process phase of dealing with children and stuff like that, and be like, oh my gosh, you know. And then we deal with yours. Yeah. So it's, as I said, witnessing them go through the same thing that you actually go through, and then they come into you and cause I actually did it, and it's like, bro, it's wild. It, it would be a wild experience because you'll be like, it will be like, there was a point in time be like, oh my god, I never imagined I would reach this far. Then you at the point where you reach this far, you have the child, and then boom, then you have to go through the process to raise a child and be like, oh my god, you know, and then the reality comes. Then when they reach that stage and stuff, and be like, oh my god, I successfully raised one child. Then you have another, then another. And it's like, then eventually you become a grandparent. Then eventually a great grandparent, and be like, bruh, can you imagine the days when I was wondering if I could even reach this far, and now I'm there? So so I said that's the thing about life where I realized that it's it's really hard, but once you survive, you reach a new phase and you be like new level unlock and you be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I reached this level. Never thought I would reach this level. But what happens is that if you never plan for this level before, then when you actually reach a point where you be like, oh, I never thought I would get this far. Then you're not actually prepared when the reality comes when you have the child. You're not prepared to actually give them the life that you never had, and such like that. Put them in a better position. So so that's what this episode is about. Where based on what I've learned so far, is that I think based on my way of growing up and such, is that it will be it's a good and a bad. Where when you have the child, it will be the end of kind of your dream because I have the things that I want to achieve and such as I've reached that point as yet. I've reached that phase as yet. But once you have the child, then you have basically like two-person you have to actually figure out and support it to the mother and the child, and then eventually more stuff. So it's like your thing is kind of split, and yeah, it's like, oh, so the good thing is actually I know about this before I actually started on my journey. Before I started my journey when I left university and stuff like that, this was the stuff that I was learning about. If you listen to some of the podcast episode, I'd be like, what how 2020 was and such like that. This was the reality that kind of shocked me when I'd be like, oh my god, this is all the real world be with woman, and then boom, I learned that from my grandmother. Where be like, yeah, this this is just an easy road. Then so it's good to know that, and then my experiences, my life experiences, kind of when I learned that knowledge, kind of just put that in perspective. Like, oh, now I understand now. So now that I have the knowledge now, then that doesn't mean that I won't make a bad decision and stuff like that. But what happens is that you can learn from my mistakes. I can hopefully make better choices. Or if I don't make better choices, then you can learn from a mistake to make better choices than I was. So that yeah, so that's the next part of the podcast as well. You're learning from my mistakes to make better choices. When you make better choices, then you'll get to progress further than me and take it to a level that I never thought that I could never take it. Then so that's the thing about the podcast. Mhm. So as I said, there's so much more I could talk about in having a child and such like that. I reached this phase where it's becoming more and more of a reality. So by the third year, you'll be here that okay, yes, now we're in this phase, and then it's like now what? But the thing about it is, I don't have a wife and such like that. So how will this child come about? That's the next phase. Oh, and who will be the woman or woman? That's the wild thing about life now, bro. Yes, because you'll be like you'll be like, okay, yes. it's only natural that you would be a one wife or such like that. But if you read the Bible, the greatest king of all, Solomon, had many wives, had many wives. So that's the thing about the Bible. Atheists or people kind of disputing the Bible. The Bible is really realistic. It's really realistic. Once you live long enough and the stuff that you learn by realize that yes, the world is not some straight line thing. What the Bible is essentially saying was that in the beginning, you know, we have these two people, and the goal was easy. God gave them an easy goal. Like, yeah, it's simple enough. But what happened was that somebody got tempted and made the wrong choice, and then now we're in the spiral of rework calamities and stuff like that, trying to um struggle our way back to that end goal that we were that God just gave that two person that He made the easy choice to make. That's all you have to do. Just not do that thing. But because they do that thing now, we had this terrible turmoil trying to figure out how to get back to the point where we could make that same reach that point where we could go back to the choice and be like, okay, yes, let's not do that now. So we can go back to paradise. So that's the struggle. So that's the struggle. So I said there's more that I could speak about having a child or stuff. But that's it for now. That's it for now. You know, there's so much that can go into, and that's the thing. I'm my life is real now. So my life is real now. There was a point in time where I thought like, oh, that those stuff could never happen, but these stuff could happen now. So I have to actively start to make plan to make sure I made the best decision, so I could have the best. So I could have so that hopefully my child could have a better start than I did. You know, yes, better start than I did. Yeah. So that's basically for this episode. Thank you for listening, and look forward for the next episode. Mm.
Well, this is the end of the episode. Thanks for watching and look forward for the next episode. To support this podcast, go to anchor.fm/cssb/support or become a sponsor for this episode. If you have a product that you want to have more exposure, DM me on the Instagram page, Reframing Mindset Podcast, or on Twitter at ReframingP. Either way would help. Thank you regardless for listening, and here's a preview for the next episode.
Guess this would be. Let's do a check. Let's see. Yeah, so this is week 30. Yes, this is week 30 of the 95 experience. And basically, around 8 months into the work, to this new work. Yeah. What I realized with this work, now I think this is at the turning point where you become an like an OG, or you, this week I'm getting ingrained into the company where it's like it's one of those stuff where I feel like it's not where I'm ingrained, where I'm part of the company now, where people are in socializing and stuff like that, to the point where it's kind of getting distracting to my work.